Hi, nice to meet you. If you haven't met me before, my name is Neal, and I do a lot of different classes for StandOutPrep. I've been teaching for a really long time, doing prep for different tests, AP and all sorts of stuff. But the thing I've been doing the longest, and probably I have the most credentials for, is SAT prep. And today I'm just going to walk you through, in the time that we've got, I'm going to walk you through multiple choice strategy, because this is the skill that I think is most helpful for students in improving their score for the reading section. Everybody's got different ideas about how to do it, and there's a lot of conflicting information out there from a lot of different people about what may or may not be the best strategy. But what I have learned, I've been doing this for about 6 years now, I've got a system that I like to use that I call it my multiple choice safety system, which is battle tested. You know, I've tested it with, like, actually I did some rough calculations. It's pushing at least 500 students over the time. And in that time, I've seen that this works and other things don't work quite as well. If it doesn't have these components, there might be extra things that you can add on to it to a certain extent, but if you don't do this to some extent, then you're missing important components. So we'll talk about that. And feel free to pop in if you have any questions. I'm going to keep my open questions to a minimum, but if I will ask you to participate a little bit here. It's a little bit interactive, so don't hesitate to respond or ask questions or something like that. Okay. So there are 5 steps. It's really more like 4 though. So when you're doing a passage, when you're doing your SAT reading section and you're just doing a particular passage out of the reading section, there's one thing before you start looking at the questions, you should read the passage. And some people worry about time management, and some people go to the questions first and then go to the passage. There can be times when it's okay, depending on the student and depending on the circumstance. There can be times when it's okay for the student to read the questions first and then go to the passage. But for the vast, vast majority of people, the best strategy to approach this is to read the passage first and then go to the questions. You're going to end up reading the questions anyway. You're going to end up reading most of the passage anyway in order to answer the questions properly. And if you're not reading the passage to some extent, then you're really not doing your best. You really need to get to the point where you can comfortably read the passage in about 3 to, depends on the level, but you want to shoot for 3 minutes maximum for reading the passage. So then, okay, so that out of the way. Now I'll kind of open it up to everybody. What do you think is the next step? You've read the passage, now what? Anybody who wants to chime in and take a guess on these, feel free. I won't ask anybody specifically, but what do you think the next step would be? You're looking at question number 5. You're on passage 1. You're looking at question number 5. You've read the passage. Now what do you do?
Maybe go back and isolate important things that you might have found throughout. Like
I like that.
Things that stood out.
Kevin has taken my classes before, so he knows. But actually, that's not step 1, Kevin. That's step 2. Before you come up with an answer for the question without looking at the answer choices, what we want to do is actually read and understand the question. This seems fairly obvious. Of course, you have to read and understand the question. Why even bother reading and understanding the question? Why even bother including this on the system? Well, this is the place where most people run into difficulty. This is a place where most people will make a mistake, no matter how good at reasoning and reading comprehension that they are. When I make a mistake, when I'm taking a practice test, this is where I made my mistake, because the vast majority of mistakes come from people not paying close enough attention to the question, and they're reading too quickly. And it's not that they couldn't understand it, it's that they didn't take the time to understand it. Like what I like to say is, The example I like to give is skydiving. Within 3 groups of skydivers, which group has the highest fatality rate for skydiving? So you've got novices or beginners, and then you have intermediate people who've done like 30 to 50 jumps, and then you have veterans who have jumped hundreds of times. Of those groups, the people, which one do you think has the most fatalities, the most negative, outcomes for jumping out of an airplane? Okay, so Andrew says intermediate, and that's the right answer. Yeah, but a lot of people will say veterans, but for the same reason. They think the veterans are the ones who become complacent. They think the veterans are the ones who are, overconfident, and they've done it a lot of times, so they have the highest rate. But actually, it's the people who make it to like 50 to 100 jumps who have the, and I'm not saying this is someone who does skydiving. I will never skydive. This is something that I've read, right? I will never jump out of an airplane ever, ever, ever in my life. I don't care. Nobody could ever convince me to do it. But the people who have done 50 to 100 jumps become complacent. The people who've done it many, many times more, they have seen how dangerous it can be, and they've had a close call or two. So they know how to respect the process. So novices, of course, are extremely terrified, and they're going to check everything. They're going to quadruple check everything every single time, maybe even check it more than they need to. And veterans are going to do the same thing because you're jumping out of an airplane. So you're going to want to check everything 4 times and make sure that your chute is packed properly. The people in the middle are going to be less prone to that. And so they can put themselves at risk. And you are probably never going to get to the expert level of multiple choice tests or standardized tests. Like, you have to do it the way that I do it to actually get to the expert level, to tell you the truth. But even if you will not get to that level, that's okay, because you can still check safely and you can skip that intermediate overconfidence step. So I focus on this. I pay close attention to this because this is where most mistakes actually happen. This is where most accidents take place. This is the most important way to be safe. So now Kevin gave us the second one, but this is important because, okay, you've read and understood the question, and one way to check your understanding is to rephrase the question. If you can rephrase the question and it still feels like you're asking the same question, then you do most likely understand the question. And it's important to rephrase it, especially for something like the dual questions where you have the line reference in the second question and it relates to the question before it. It's really important to rephrase that first question and use the line references to check. That's an important part of the process there. Now, okay, you've read and understood the question. Now what do you do? Why should you come up with your own answer first? Why is it important for you to come up with your own answer first before looking at the answer choices?
To show understanding.
To gain understanding, I would say. Yeah, I would say that's the right idea. You want to be able to gain understanding of the question before you go into those answer choices. There's 2 reasons for it. Andrew, yeah, you've got the right idea. You want to make sure that what you're thinking is logical, because there's 2 things. One, the people who make the test want you to fail. The way that they set it up is that they want you to make a mistake. I mean, they don't personally have anything against you, but their job is to make the test challenging and for there to be, I mean, it's supposed to be a challenge, right? It's a game, and they're your opponent. So if you look at the answer choices first, you're engaging your opponent without first getting information about your opponent. Would you go into battle with an army against another army, not knowing how many people they have or where they're located or anything like that? Of course not. That's silly. You want to get as much information as you can before you engage with your enemy. Secondly, you are your own enemy. Now, some people, they don't like this part, or this isn't natural to them, because the answer choice is there. It's right there. The correct answer is one of those four is the correct answer, but this is what leads to the problem. It's fairly easy to understand that the people who make the test are your enemy, but what people are less frequently aware of is that you are your own enemy because of your brain, the way your brain works. In those four questions, one of them is right. In your limbic system, the mammal part of your brain that is related to emotions, it knows that there's dopamine hidden in those answer choices. Dopamine is the chemical that is basically happy juice. So when you pick up your phone and you've got like, just the colors on your phone and an app, and you tap an app and the app opens and you're like, yay, I love my phone. When you just grab your phone and you just unlock it and then close it again, that's you trying to get a dopamine. That's the mammal part of your brain trying to get a dopamine rush, because we get little rushes from things. In gambling, which is what happens when you just look at one of those four questions and you just pick one, you're gambling. And the rat part of your brain, the mammal part of your brain, knows that if you get it right and you didn't do any work to figure it out first, you're going to get a good answer. But so let me ask you guys, what did I have for breakfast? Everybody take a shot. Everybody pick one. What do you think I had for breakfast? Anybody who thinks that they're fairly confident in their answer here? Okay, Andrew says eggs. Jason says cereal. Does everybody have one? Even if you don't put it in the chat or say it out loud, does everybody have one? Okay. Well, the correct answer is nothing. And if you didn't pick D, you're wrong. Now, is this a fair question? No, this is not a fair question. How is it possible that you could have known what I had for breakfast? You absolutely couldn't know what I had for breakfast. I hope you don't actually know that I had nothing for breakfast. It's very creepy if you do actually know what I had for breakfast. So the point being here is that that's kind of what's happening. You're kind of operating off of zero information if you just pick one answer choice without looking at it first. And that if you felt a little bit, just even a tiny little bit frustrated, or a little bit like, well, that's dumb, I can't know that, or even like a little disappointed that you didn't get it right, that's your limbic system, because the mammal part of your brain never wants to lose. Doesn't matter what the circumstances are. It doesn't matter whether it's fair or not. Emotionally, nobody likes to lose. Nobody likes to be wrong. But if you do step 2 before you do step 3, if you come up with your own answer first before you look at the answer choices, you can skip that little rat. The little rat puts his finger on one. He puts his little rat paw on like C with no reasoning whatsoever. You can leave the rat out of the equation, and that'll save you time and energy, and it'll improve your confidence. This is really the most important step for improving doing your multiple choice. And so let's say you have got this, right? You're doing this and you've got your answer. So I had nothing for breakfast so far. I'm going to eat after this is done. What do you do next? You got your answer. What do you do? This is a more traditional part. Yep, process of elimination. Classic. But good process of elimination involves removing the wrong answers. Don't only choose the correct ones. Because you may be wrong. So you definitely want to double check everything. Because this one's easy. Doing process of elimination on the breakfast question is quite easy, because you just say, well, eggs are not nothing, cereal is not nothing, toast is not nothing, and nothing is nothing. So it's going to be D. But if we have something like this, it becomes a lot harder. So which of these is the right answer? Well, now it's still easy, but process of elimination is a lot harder, and process of elimination reveals the limits of going with your instinct here, because you don't actually know what I had for breakfast and you didn't see me write it down. So we don't actually have textual support here. If we do process of elimination, we're looking for nothing, but that's nothing. This is not, well, this is nothing, which kind of, you probably can remove F. There's not a good non-phonetic way, but this is still no thing. It still could be nothing, you know. It basically, logically, with pure logic, because we don't know how it's spelled, what I said, because maybe nuzzing is like something they eat for Korea, for breakfast in Korea. Do you know if nuzzing is a food or not? It's possible. You don't know. You don't have all the information. So we can't remove any, we can't actually remove any of them logically. We can remove them through inductive logic, inductive reasoning, because we've read words before. We know, we've never heard of a food called nuzzing. We know that usually you don't do all caps. We know that you don't put a space between no and thing. So you can remove those, but textually speaking, we don't have support. So we still end up with the right answer if we go to the last step, which is what happens when you can't pick. And in order to do this right, you want to follow this process. You do step 0, then you do steps 1, 2, and 3, repeat steps 1, 2, and 3, and then you do step 4. Don't do step 4 until it's an emergency. You don't want to just end up there. You want to at least try it twice. If you try it twice and you can't quite get it, and you're still at 50-50, you're probably not going to get it in a reasonable amount of time. So it's better to just pull the 50-50 thing and do your best. In purposes of, if you end up with more time, go back. But you want to make sure you're able to look at all the questions in every passage. So, okay, so 50-50, there's a few rules here, very basic, based only on logic. It's not, there's no trick. These are just logically more likely to be correct. Sometimes they're not correct, but the vast majority are. First of all, always avoid absolutes, because they're easy to prove wrong. That's why they use them. So must, only, always, just, never, those are 100% words or 0% words, and a single thing that makes it wrong is wrong. So a single exception proves those statements wrong. You want to take weak over strong. So you take like over love, for example, for the same reason as the absolute thing. Extreme claims require extreme evidence, right? And so similar for general over specific. Now, sometimes these are wrong. Sometimes if you just do this 50-50 coin toss, it actually was the strong answer, or it actually was the specific answer, or sometimes it's even the absolute answer. That's very rare, but it could happen. So you want to be aware of that, but when you're guessing, this is the best way to do it. Now, I've found that students that follow this are far more in control of their time management. They're far more in control of their reading comprehension, in fact. This is the single most important step to improving your SAT score. We can work on reading and reading comprehension in different ways, reading stories and doing practice and talking about how to improve vocabulary and things like that. But if you're not doing this, this is not doing some form of this is almost certainly the reason why you wouldn't be doing as well on the test as you could be. I've met a lot of students who've got pretty high scores. They're already pulling, you know, they're like 350 on the reading section, and they're still missing some, and then they can improve really rapidly when they do this. Yeah, that's about it. We're running short on time, but does anybody have any questions on this? Did anybody have any, feel like there's anything I could add in there? Anything that you'd like to know more about that I was talking about? Open it up. Any questions whatsoever? Okay. Then along with this, we'll do, there's a few more minor strategic things that we can put in. This is the bulk of what the process is. And then in my classes, we'll just do practice tests. We'll identify specific problems that you might have. And this actually also applies to the writing section to a certain degree. You do want to read the passage with the writing section as well. Andrew asked if it's a good idea to second guess yourself. I say there's two different kinds of second guessing. There's the second guessing where I call it the high voice in your head, where it's like, well, but, so I think it's B, but what about C? Like, I think C might be, it goes, the tone of your voice goes up here, like within your head, you're like, well, but maybe. And that's like imagination. That is actually usually wrong. That's just self-doubt, anxiety, and fear. A lack of confidence in your own process. So, well, what about D? It's usually wrong. That's a bad kind of second guessing. But then there's the other one that's more based in relief or understanding. You're like, ooh, the low one. I call it the low doubt. High doubt is bad. Low doubt is good because it's like relief. Like, oh, but what about B? Oh, C, but B. That one, that's okay. You can trust that one. That's a relief. You figured it out. But this one, this is like where conspiracy theories come from. Like, but what if there's lizard people? Isn't it possible that the world is flat? It's the same kind of thing. So I've got another class coming up, so I got to take off. But get in contact with Janet if you want to join the class. We'll certainly be working on a wide variety of things. The whole class is not just the multiple choice strategy, but with the time that we've got, I felt like this is always the best way to introduce the SAT reading section class. So I hope you guys have a good day, and take care.